What is up, guys? In today's video, I'm going to be talking about the buff that Fortnite gave the Oni shotgun earlier this week and whether or not that changes how I feel about the shotgun. As always, if you guys do enjoy this video, remember to give it a like, subscribe if you like to see more, and comment down below which shotgun is your favorite so far in Fortnite Chapter 6. So with this week's update, the Oni shotgun got a buff to its max damage or its damage cap by 5 for each rarity. So I'll have the new max damages on screen now. But it goes from 130 for the common version up to 150 for the legendary version. So a perfect shot with the gold Oni shotgun will deal 150 damage. And I would assume it would be 155 for the mythic version, since each rarity gets a 5 damage increase over, the previous rarity. And this is a good improvement, I think, as the damage cap is one of my least favorite things about this weapon. And even with this buff, I still think it's not even, I think, even with this buff, the Oni shotgun still does have a lower damage cap than that of the Sentinel pump. So the gray Sentinel pump has a max damage of 170, while the gold one has a max damage of 195, and then the mythic 200. So a gray Sentinel pump shotgun, if you hit a perfect shot, will deal more damage than a mythic Oni shotgun if you hit a perfect shot with that shotgun. And obviously, with the way shotguns work in Fortnite, you're not always hitting perfect shots, but just with how the weapon plays, you're probably going to be hitting harder with the Sentinel pump if you're in its ideal range and your aim is good. And that is why I still prefer the Sentinel pump. I think this buff is good. It's an improvement. And if you liked the Oni shotgun, this is great for you. But if you already preferred one of the other shotguns, I don't think this buff really changes anything. Like, it's nice, but it's not significant enough to change, how you would rank the shotguns. I think if you already really preferred the auto shotgun, you're still going to prefer that. If you already really preferred the Sentinel pump, I don't think this changes enough to change that. And then if you liked the Oni already, like, awesome, you already liked the Oni. I think because of that, higher damage potential, the Sentinel pump, I think, is just a much better fighting shotgun, especially for like chaotic or fast-paced moments. The Oni has, really good range. That's kind of its selling point, is its range and consistency. But to me, that range isn't the biggest deal because of how much mobility we have in the game right now and how fights typically play out. I feel like I'm either, playing for mid-range tags with my AR and then pushing somebody. And at that point, it's either, an AR fight or a very up-close shotgun fight. I feel like I'm not really in those situations where, like, the Oni's range really matters that much at all. Like where it's not AR range, but also not quite Sentinel pump range. It's like a weird range that I just feel like doesn't really happen that much. I'm either more distanced or like very close to the person. And it's really not that hard to get on people if you do get a damage advantage on them this season, because we have so much mobility. We have the Void Mask, Shockwaves, Kinetic Blade, Typhoon Blade. There is so much mobility out there right now that I feel like I'm very rarely in just that like weird in between area where I would really appreciate the range of the Oni shotgun. In a world where there was no mobility in the game at all, I think the Oni shotgun would be probably the best, but that's not the game we play. If the fight was playing out, really slow around like cover and buildings, like I could see that added range being good for just getting like chip damage in those situations. You peek for a little bit, you throw out like 80, 90 damage. That's great. But I feel like those situations just really don't happen. Like I was saying, it's either a mid-range AR fight or you're jumping on the person shotgunning them, or they're jumping on you probably with the sword. And if I'm getting attacked by the sword, I would 100% rather have the Sentinel pump shotgun than the Oni shotgun. Like the Oni shotgun strengths are there. And I've talked about this in a few videos already this season. And I've seen comments of people saying that like I ignore the strengths of the weapon. It's not that I ignore the strengths of the weapon. I feel like those strengths just don't add much value with how fights actually play out in Chapter 6. And everybody's, game kind of plays differently, but that's kind of how I think. The Oni shotgun only has 2 bullets, which I think is a lot of people's biggest complaint with this weapon. To me, it's not the biggest deal. Like, I'm not a fan of only having 2 bullets, but I think it's okay. This is something that's really going to matter in those like chaotic situations, though, especially when there's multiple people involved. If you just ended up fighting somebody and then you're getting third-partied, or it's a team game mode and you have to deal with their teammates, those 2 shots is really going to like grief, And then the Sentinel pump only has 4 shots, which isn't amazing either. It's really not that different, you know? I mean, I guess it's double, but it's not an absurd amount of shots. But since the Sentinel pump reloads 1 shell at a time, you can shoot the gun basically as soon as your character's hand touches the gun. If you need 1 more shot in a fight, or you have enough time to get 1 shell, 2 shells in the shotgun, that's great. Whereas like with the Oni shotgun, if you don't complete its reload animation, then you don't get that, those bullets. It reloads like a more traditional weapon. And that's another reason why I think the Sentinel pump, thrives in those chaotic situations. With very small windows of time, you can get ammo in your shotgun and keep it loaded and, get to cover for a second, reload, peek again. There's just the way the game plays around like shell at a time reload shotguns. You can get by in really chaotic situations in ways that like the Oni is going to have a harder time in. And that's part of why I think the Sentinel, thrives in more chaotic situations, along with its higher damage potential. If I'm getting pushed and I have right shoulder peek and I need, like a bailout high damage shot and I have a decent Sentinel pump, I'm confident that can happen. Whereas like the Oni, I feel like I'm going to hit them solid damage, but it's not going to be, game changing most of the time. And that's basically how I view these shotguns. I think the Oni thrives in more kind of slow and controlled fights. And then the Sentinel pump thrives in more like chaotic, scrappy fights. And I feel like with how Chapter 6 plays out, you're getting in those chaotic, scrappy fights, especially because of the sword. You're getting in those situations a lot more than just like the slow and controlled fights. And that's kind of how I viewed a lot of these more like high range shotguns and why they've never been my favorite shotguns, even though the range is there. It's just like with how Fortnite plays out, especially when you're playing against better players, I feel like you very rarely just have those incredibly slow stalemates. Like it's either they're fighting you close range or they're fighting you mid range, and there's not very much just like stagnation and in between. But everybody's lobbies is different and everybody's game kind of plays a little bit different. And I don't think the Oni shotgun is terrible. It just it's not my preferred choice for how I want to play the game. And I think that's basically going to be everybody's opinion, or how everyone will rate the shotgun. If it fits your playstyle, you'll probably like the Oni more. If you have the more, aggressive playstyle, I think the Sentinel pump is better. And as I said at the start of this video, this buff is good. And if you preferred the Oni already, that's awesome. But if the Oni wasn't already your favorite shotgun, I don't think this buff was really like game changing enough to change how you would feel about that. Like if they somehow, like they can't improve the bullets because it's the way the shotgun is, but if they improved like the fire rate as well, and you wouldn't have to worry about swapping and you could shoot those 2 shots out really quickly, I think that's something that would like really improve the weapon. But this is just like a small improvement. I don't think it really changes the game too much. Let me know down in the comments below what you think of this buff to the Oni shotgun and which shotgun you prefer in Chapter 6. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Thanks for watching. I cannot hit this guy. He's gonna be no mobility right now if that's his only thing, because he just used 3. That's 50 fall damage. That's insane to me. Got this guy in medkits. I'm worried that the guy that was railgunning me is over here, the one I was trying to hold. Third NPC there. They fighting? I'm so confused right now. I got luck, Shafrin. Buttons were like cushion. I think it's because of how fast I was going or something. I don't know. Just how much fall damage Fortnite felt like giving me in that moment. How much HP does this person have, bro?